Welcome to Permission Slips, a space to practice paying compassionate attention to your life so you can experience the wholeness, purpose, and joy you were made for. I'm Jillian DeBritz, a life and leadership coach and a recovering perfectionist, learning alongside you how to give myself permission to be human. I'm so glad you're here with me for this first episode of the Permission Slips podcast. I wanted to spend a little bit of time sharing my vision and what I'm hoping to do in these conversations as we move forward. So here's a little background on how this podcast came to be. For a long time, I've dreamed about starting a podcast to explore with my out loud voice some of the questions that swirl around inside me all the time. I have amazing people in my life and conversations that are constantly shaping how I think, how I see, how I feel, and how I'm making sense of my world and my life and my purpose. I've known for years how much I love putting words to my internal realities, using writing and time spent at the keyboard, trying to make sense of what I feel on the inside. And it also gives me a place to help other people identify their own internal experience in ways that they tell me that they wouldn't be able to name if it weren't for the words that I write or the words that I give them. So there's something about communication and using words to help make sense of the world that is really important to me. But I've also known that there's something different about having a conversation that the written word doesn't quite convey. There's something about our tone of voice, the inflection of certain words, and honestly, just that felt sense of connection with another human being. I've also known for a long time that I am quite a verbal processor, and my fingers can't always keep up with my thoughts as easily as my voice can. So I decided to experiment with podcasting. In fact, as I began this podcasting journey, I had all these ideas of how I wanted to shape different episodes. I had all of these things I wanted to talk about and ideas I wanted to process. And I was sitting down at my computer, writing a script of sorts to try to communicate. And my daughter came into the room, Brooklyn, who's 13 and brilliant and knows me very well. And she listened to what I was trying to record. And she said, "Mom, you sound like a robot." And she said, "You're all about vulnerability and helping people show up authentically. And here you are reading a script. You can't do that." So my sweet daughter coached me and said, "Mom, you are on Marco Polo all of the time," which if you don't know what Marco Polo is, it's a communication app that allows you to talk to people using video, and you can listen on your own time at your own pace. And it's something that I use to connect with friends from across the country daily. And she's like, "Mom, you're on Marco Polo all the time talking to your friends. Here, turn on Marco Polo and just pretend that you're talking to one of them." And so I did. I had Brooklyn right next to me, literally rubbing my shoulders and coaching me along, encouraging me, saying, "You're doing good," with her, thumbs up. And I just started to talk, and I realized I can't offer anything of substance in isolation. And that's true of everything I offer into the world. Anything that I say or write is going to be empty apart from the way it lands in someone else in their story. As you listen to these words, you're making sense of it in your own way. And you're making meaning based on your own experience and interpretation. And so as I was thinking about how I want to communicate, I realized that conversations are the place that I experience the most transformation. And so that's where I'm going to start, is having conversations with people either that I know well, who are part of my actual life, or people that I want to know or I want to learn from. And I want to get curious and ask questions and learn together with you about how to embrace more freedom, more wholeness, more joy, more meaning. And I'm hoping that these conversations will start to encourage you to get curious about places in your own life that you might need a little more compassion, a little more gentleness, a little more support. And again, as I'm having conversations with people, recording them here, my hope is that it will encourage you to also find people in your actual life who can continue the conversation with you, that you can get curious with them and share with them more vulnerably than you might before hearing that you're not the only one. That's my hope, is that you hear in different ways, you're not the only one, you're not alone. The reality is that, as with most things in my life, when there's something new I want to try, I find myself hesitating. Insecurities bubble to the surface. And even in this case, as I thought about starting a podcast, I just started to ask and wonder, what would I have to say that people actually want to listen to? What if I sound stupid? What if I make a fool of myself? What if I open my mouth and the things that I fear people think, they actually do? They think that I don't know what I'm talking about, or am asking questions that everyone else knows the answer to. And honestly, can I even figure out the technology of podcasting? I don't know. These things are difficult. And the only way forward is to take a step. The only way I'm going to find out is if I actually start. So instead of making excuses, which was what I found myself doing, these questions about, do I have what it takes? Will it even work? Will people listen? Those questions became paralyzing. They just became excuses not to begin. Really, excuses that were rooted in my lack of confidence in myself. I needed to know that I was allowed to start doing this new, exciting, scary, fun, creative, terrifying thing before I felt ready. I needed to know that I was allowed to figure it out as I go and to learn from mistakes that are an unavoidable part of the process of starting something new. Mistakes are part of the journey. At its core, I really needed to know that I had permission. I want you to know you have permission too. This has been so true in areas across the board in my life, areas that we'll explore more in the episodes to come. Anytime I take a risk, before I ask for support, before I do anything new or costly or brave or vulnerable, I need to know that even when I'm feeling swirly or guilty or unsteady or unsure, it's okay for me to do the thing anyway. In more ways than I can count, I've needed to know that I'm allowed to be exactly where I am. I'm allowed to trust what's inside of me. And I'm allowed to honor the one and only life that I've been given. I'm allowed to show up fully, authentically, imperfectly as my true self. And so as I've considered how I want to begin this show, offering you the reminders and permission slips that I also need, here's the heartbeat of what I want you to know. You have permission. You have permission to come alive. You don't have to stay stuck in survival mode, trudging through the motions and fulfilling obligations based on what other people expect for your life. I want you to know that you have permission not to just survive. You have permission to thrive. You have permission to find out what it would take for you to flourish. You're made for more than just getting through the day. You're made with purpose. You're made for a purpose that only you can fulfill. And the amazing thing about purpose is the one that you're made for, it's not a drudgery. The purpose you're made for is the key to your joy. Your joy matters more than you know. And in this podcast, I want to explore what it means to pursue a life of joy and meaning and purpose as we become more fully the people we're designed to be. We'll ask questions together about what it means to fight for our wholeness, heart, mind, body, and soul. We'll make space to get curious about our internal worlds, paying particular attention to the things that spark joy and help us come alive on the inside. We'll invite others into our journey, exploring the necessary and difficult practice of vulnerability, which is an unavoidable, necessary, beautiful requirement as we walk on the path toward wholeness. Truly, nothing has changed my life like learning to embrace the power of vulnerability. And so that will be a theme throughout every episode. We're going to learn to notice and name our current reality, because as a coach, that's what I help people do, is we get curious about our current reality so that we can build awareness about what's keeping us from our ideal future. And then as we are able to name and notice what's true about us right now, and name and notice what we long to be true about us in the future, we're then able to build some awareness about what's keeping us from moving from where we are to where we want to be. And we can start to get unstuck. That's what coaching is, and that's what I hope we can do together here. We'll practice tending to ourselves with care, cultivating self-compassion instead of self-criticism, gentleness instead of judgment. We'll learn to listen to the voice of love, opening ourselves to the kindness of God that is actually better than we can imagine. And we'll give ourselves permission to practice taking tiny steps of intentional action that I hope will move us closer to the lives we long to live. So, how do you discover your God-given purpose? What does it even mean? Finding your purpose, in my opinion, means living in alignment with your sacred design, using your passions, your gifts, your wiring, and your story as only you can for the good of others. Living with purpose means paying attention to your life through the lens of hope, believing that God is working in you and through you to reveal His beauty and goodness and love to the world. But finding our purpose requires us to pay attention to our own lives, to pay attention to the invitations of God all around us, to pay attention to what's happening within us and outside of us, to pay attention to the voice of God, which is kinder than we can dare dream to imagine. The reality is that your family, your colleagues, your neighbors, heck, strangers around you, and your friends, the whole world needs you to be exactly who only you are made to be. Your authentic, beautiful, vibrant, flourishing, fully you self is a gift to those around you. You are a gift. And even more, learning how to embrace the fullness of who you are is a gift to yourself too. So consider this your permission slip. You're allowed to explore what makes you come fully alive. So as we continue to have conversations here, I hope you'll find ideas and inspiration about how that could look in your own life. Here's your permission slip. You're allowed to pay attention to what makes you come alive. Thanks for being with me on this very first episode of Permission Slips. I hope you're as excited as I am about the conversations that we'll have here that will help you pay attention to your life with greater compassion, and that I hope will give you permission to come more fully alive. Your life matters more than you know.